Right, so what we are going to do today, I have just finished Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, and I'm just going to talk about it. This is going to be another one of my usual, more ramble session kind of things, more of like a stream of consciousness, more so than an actual typical review. I'm not anywhere close to well read at all. I don't know how to really review prose and stuff. All I can really do is sit here and tell you what I liked, what I didn't like, and hopefully you can get a fair assumption from the stuff that I talk about in this video, to be like, do I want to pick this up? Do I not? If you're watching this, you probably already read Shadow of the Gods and you're just curious to hear someone else's spiel about it. I liked it. I really liked it. That sounded more like I was going to say I liked it, but I didn't love it. I think this is the first John Gwynne I've read. This is the first, Norse fantasy that I've read. And I would even... Maybe The Witcher fits into, this is the most, typical fantasy, when you say fantasy to someone, what people would think of. I mean, there is no party, there is no big quest, there is, none of that stuff. I mean, there are, converging plot lines. It does feel very much it feels very Sanderson in that way, where you have, the characters that are converging, and they might not converge by the end of this book, but they are, the plot lines are going to converge at some point. And, yeah, I really like when things do that, and I really liked it in here as well. And I like that it's a while before there's any converging plot lines, before any character that we've been following from the start actually meets, before anyone actually meets anyone else from the other POVs, before any of the POV characters actually meet each other. There's a long while, and by long while I mean one POV character never meets the rest of the cast, or never meets the rest of the POV cast, and the other two meet on the final page, which is very interesting for me. But there is connections and characters from one POV that get mentioned in another, So there's a lot of interesting stuff from there, and it's a very intriguing world. Like I said, Norse mythology. Obviously, I've got an interest from that, just from, being a Marvel Comics person, knowing that that's, a lot of the stuff that they take, the more prevalent mythological stuff in Marvel Comics is from Norse mythology. So that, and obviously the most recent God of War games, have taken place in Norse mythology as well. So it's something that I'm very much interested in, but I didn't know much about. So this, I know it's more of a fictionalization of Norse mythology, which may or may not be fictional to begin with. But I really liked the lean into the more 100% standard fantasy stuff. Obviously, big dragon on the cover. The cover is definitely a massive selling point. It's do you remember those memes that went around the internet for a very long time, where it was the big monster and the little tiny dude, and the little tiny dude was my mental stability, was me, my anxiety. That kind of stuff, and that's what drew me into these books to begin with, and what made me want to pick them up was the covers just look really cool, man. Is it a bit of a lie? I mean, there is a big dragon in this. Is the dragon as much of a part of the book? Is the dragon in the book as much as the cover would lead you to believe? No. But a big portion of this book is around, like, Dragonborn and people that have, like, connections to this dragon. The best way I can describe the world in this is, have you watched Grimm? Have you watched the fantasy, like, sci-fi cop procedural show called Grimm, where I think they're even called Vaesen in the book. Vaesen, creatures created by... Yeah, they're even called Vaesen in the book. They're called Vaesen in Grimm. Why did I not make that connection while reading the book? I've only just made that connection now. Yeah, this is like high fantasy Norse mythology Grimm, where you've got these characters that are they're people, but they're also they also have, like, they're called tainted, and they're kind of like tainted with the abilities and powers and physical aspects, physical attributes of the god that they are derived from, which is, you know, you've got Rota, which is the rat god, you've got several other ones, and Likrifa, who is the dragon god, and the Dragonborn are kind of shown as this, like, almost mythological, even to the characters in the book. Like, it's a surprise that these things even exist. They thought they were saga tales or stories. They didn't even know that these things were real. And the Dragonborn take definitely an antagonistic route, but we're kind outside of the Bloodsworn themselves. Almost every character has a little bit of, like, ooh, I don't know if you're a good person, because even, like, Orca, who is kind of the main character in this, very early on in the book, she's seen, like, smacking her child around the face, and it's like, yeah, it's a different time. Like, it's high fantasy, and you've got to kind of you've got to put into realization that just because I'm not going to finish that sentence because no, that's not what it's trying to say. The book is trying to say that this character isn't a good mother. It's the father that's great, but the father is taken away, so that kind of makes Orca, kind of gives her the impetus to, yeah, I've got to be a better mother, and also her son is taken, and that's where you're like, oh, this is someone that will do literally anything to save her son. That kind of shows more than, like, the bursts of the angry outbursts at the start of the book. Outside of the Bloodsworn, every character in this has a bit of grey area to them. You're seeing, like, the Battle Grimm, another group of characters that you follow. Some the earliest things that they do is sell people into essentially slavery, and then you're following these characters, and you're, you know, made to understand their kind of plight as well, and what they're all about. And, you know, it doesn't, you know, you never really kind of, and even the character who's POV, you follow through that is like having doubts about, is this stuff that I'm kind of involved in, is it what I should be doing? And are these people that I'm following good people? And the answer is, what is good, what is bad? In this kind of world, you kind of just do whatever you can to make money and survive. And if that involves selling people, if that involves hunting these kind of Vaesen and selling them to become thralls, then that's kind of what they have to do to survive. That's what I got from it anyway. But yeah, by the end of the book, a lot of the things from the start don't really have much hold anyway. There's a lot of character deaths that are thrown at you at the end of this book that kind of were like, oh, I wish that was a bigger moment. That felt like it should have been a bigger moment. What? I mean, there's one that I feel like shouldn't have been the big moment that it was, that is given the time of day and the time to like marinate, and I feel like that's the death that kind of hit me the least, or was the least like, oh, I can't believe that they killed off that character this early. But there is, by the end of the book, I feel like there is a lot of like characters being killed off for the sake of shock value, and we need the character in a completely different situation at the end of the book. I feel like there is almost like a bit of a rush to get finished, especially like in the last chapter. There's a bit of a rush to be like, this is the end of the book now. Obviously it doesn't end with like a rush to get to the final point in the story, because this is book one in a trilogy. But I just feel like the eventual meeting of these two POV characters felt very like, oh, that's how they met? That's a bit anticlimactic. It's a bit of a yeah. Essentially that. I wouldn't say there's any point in this book that I was bored during, despite the yawn. I wouldn't say there's any point in this book that I was like bored or out of it. I would say that the first half, like kind of up into where we're still setting up who these characters are, what their motivations are, what they're doing, and that is basically half of the book. I commend the book for doing that, for being like, we're going to take the time to make you care about these characters before everything gets pulled from a rug and the story kind of starts proper and the actual like journey starts, and it's going to be something completely different for each character, but they're all going to converge, and turns out, whoopty frickin' do, they're all looking, or they're all like kind of going for the same goal. By the end of it, they are anyway. But yeah, really, really good book. Feel like the last few chapters kind of suffered and kind of like were trying to do a Sanderlanche type thing, but not really getting to it, because in a Sanderson book, the thing that I love about Sanderson is each book ends. Each book has a ending, and maybe some book twos, like say Mistborn 2, say The Well of Ascension. I'm looking over there to remember what the name of it is. The Well of Ascension. Say that, for example, that doesn't necessarily have a definitive, like, end, like a full stop, you can stop reading here. But by that point, you're invested in the series, and there's a third one on the way that you know about, and, a third one's out now. I would say every book in Mistborn Era 2, I would even say every book in the Stormlight Archive has a ending, or has like a big climactic battle, and then it's downtime. And then there's like the tease of like, this is what's happening next. This might be where we're going next. Here's a little thing to get you excited for the next book. I think with this, there's no prologue, there's no epilogue. And I feel like the prologue and the epilogue, you don't need it, but this is the first book that I've read. I'm trying to remember if The Witcher had prologues and epilogues, and I don't think any of those books did, and I think that's tantamount to why the reason why I love Sanderson is because the book ends definitively, and then the epilogue is the tease. There is no epilogue in this. There is no prologue in this. So the kind of stinger is the end of the last chapter. And the stinger is these characters are now going to share the same page real estate, essentially. These characters are going to be together in the next book. They're probably after the same thing. Onwards. See you next time, same channel next week for part 2, essentially. And I don't like that ending, especially in the first book of a trilogy. I always feel like the first book should end like properly. Like, it could be, this is like, this could, I feel like it could be like, I feel like every first book in a trilogy should be like, you could jump off now, and you've got a story, but little stinger tease for like, there is going to be a wider story throughout. And like, even when it comes down to villains, because the way that this book is set up is, it's very close into the POVs that you're following at that time. For that reason, you don't really get any kind of POV of any kind of villain character. And by the time that villains show up, it's in the second half of the book. So none of them really get a chance to shine. Maybe that's by design. Maybe the point isn't the villains. Maybe the point is that everything is dangerous. Everything is out to get you. Everything is evil. These are the only good characters. Maybe that's the point. But I still would have liked some kind of like mustache twirling villain. I always like a villain in my fantasy books. I always like a villain in my media, to be honest. And the lack of discernible, pinpointed, like, that is the bad guy, that is who we're looking to defeat, kind of thing. I was like, oh. I mean, we do get that, but they're such a non-character. They're basically just a name. It's like, I'm hunting this person. What are they about? What are they doing? I guess we're going to find out in later books, maybe. Still very excited to carry on with this series, and obviously, like I said at the start, I really liked this. I really liked 95% of this. I really like the build-up. I really like the middle, and I usually don't really like middles, but I feel like the middle is where we start really, like, we get on the train in the middle. The train leaves the station at the middle, and then it kind of like, it doesn't fall off the track, but there's a little bit of like, imagine if a railway had speed bumps. That is kind of like what the end of this book is. It's just a little speed bump that might work really well when we get to the second book, which won't be the next book that I read, by the way. I feel like I want a little bit of a break from like high fantasy stuff. I know a break from like one high fantasy book, but what I wanted to do this year was not kind of focus in, or what I wanted to do for the latter half of this year was not focus in on one specific series or one specific trilogy and binge that. I don't want to get sick of John Gwynne. I don't want to like invest a lot of time into this trilogy and just bash it all out, and then by the time we get to book 3, be like, I really wish I was reading something else, or I'm kind of bored with these characters, or I'm kind of bored with the way that this writing style, because I was kind of getting that especially when I was reading Stormlight Archive. I was reading 1,000-page book after 1,000-page book that all kind of read the same, really, and you could kind of, I could even be like, oh, this is the character that's going to keep showing up and going to keep being like a like mini like villain for the book of, and their chosen character that they're going to torment is going to be this one, and vice versa. I could even see like the parallels, and going straight from Mistborn to Stormlight Archive, I was like, this is very similar to that. Maybe by design, because it's all part of the Cosmere, but they're very similar to that. I don't want to do that with John Gwynne. I don't want to see patterns, or I don't want to be reading all the books in succinct, one after the other, because I don't want to be like, oh, that's very similar to the structure of the first book. I want to be like, I've read the first book in the Bloodsworn saga. I can go somewhere else for it now. I want to have a little bit more freedom, a little bit more like mood reading. I believe the BookTok crowd calls it, the BookTube crowd calls it. The BookTok is a different app, different thing over there. We don't talk about that. We don't we don't get bogged down in the space of short form content, brain rot, gobbledygook. Anyone that enjoys BookTok, you're more than happy to. More than happy to leave it all over there on the brain rot app. But anyways, I'll see you guys in the next one. The next book that I'm going to be reading will be, let me just look at it for a second. It will be Wistful Ascending by JCM Byrne. It's an indie book, indie read, so that means things will be in the description for that video. Not this one, we're not talking about it in this one. We're talking about it in the next one. And I'm probably also going to talk about it a little bit in my monthly wrap-up video, because I will have at least read a page from it by the end of this month. But it's a bit shorter, and it's completely different. It's like a sci-fi superhero-y type thing. I think kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy, or like Nova. I think it gives me like Nova vibes-ish, like Green Lantern vibes almost. But yeah, that's what we're doing next. And I will be back to the Bloodsworn saga. I'm probably going to interchange it. I'll do, obviously got that finished, I'll do something else. I'll do the next Bloodsworn saga, I'll do something else, and then I'll do the last Bloodsworn saga. And then I've got one more book after that, whatever that ends up being. It'll either be Red Rising or Jade City. It'll be one of those two, and then I'll be fully up to date on every book that I own at the moment. So I'll have free space in my reading section. I hope to get done with everything before the end of the year, so that whatever I get around Christmas time, because I'm bound to get some books then, can be my TBR for the start of 2027. But anyways, I will see you guys in the next one. Hopefully you enjoyed. Boys, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, check out the Twitch, all that lovely good stuff. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.